Hi folks, I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. I'm Ken Calvert alongside my very good friend Father Joe Grimaldi on a frigid January day here in the Motor City. The Father Joe podcast proudly supported by Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln, located at 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield. Visit their website, starlincoln.com. Have a look at their huge selection of luxury cars, including the Lincoln MKC. I am in love with my new 2019 Lincoln MKC, and so is Father Joe Grimaldi. 2019 North American International Auto Show going on right now. You are going to be blown away by that Lincoln display, the talk of the show, the 2020 Lincoln Aviator. Stop on by Houghton McInerney's Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. Visit starlincoln.com. That's starlincoln.com. As I said, it's a frigid day here in the Motor City. You and I warming up with a cup of coffee, talking about various topics for the podcast. And we've had some really good ones lately. People come up to me like all of a sudden I'm wearing clericals. You know what I mean? Like I'm part of the
I really love that.
You know what I mean? Like Deacon Ken, Brother Ken, Father Ken.
Bishop Ken.
Yeah. What is your stance on married priests? And I go, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what, I'm happily married. I love it. It appears that on the 2019 Synod.
Yes.
What is a synod?
Okay, synod basically is a gathering of bishops from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they discuss hot topics, if you want, topics that are on the minds of a lot of people. And they try to come up with certain possibilities and how to approach them. And so obviously something like married priesthood would certainly be on the top of the list.
Why haven't we moved there quicker? In that direction, in that area? We know that the ranks are thin. We know that there are ways for how a married man can become a Catholic priest.
Well, first of all, he has to be either divorced or a widower, and then he could apply, and then he would go through the process of training and things of that sort. So, yeah, people can do that if they've been married. Now, for example, I know a number of married priests right within our diocese, married because they were widowed, and so now they've become priests, and they have grandchildren that visit them, and then children that visit them. So it's kind of an interesting lifestyle when you think all these years the priest was always a celibate, huh? And so it's kind of an interesting turnaround. But it does exist.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that exists, too, is priests that belong to other religions who want to become part of the Catholic Church. If they've gone through all the proper steps and are accepted into the Catholic Church, they bring along their wife and their children and families with them. Now, there aren't too many of them, but they do exist in the United States. So you do have priests who are married, and they would be similar to any other minister that you know that is married, so except they're Catholic. They become Catholic. They were, let's say, Episcopal or whatever the case might be, and then they join the Catholic Church, and they function as regular priests. Those are the only two types that I can imagine right now. We don't start them off as seminarians if they're married, and then they have to promise celibacy. And so right now we don't have married priests as such, but there are married priests, in quotes. Okay, there are.
Yeah, which is a little confusing at times, but you brought up three different areas that I want to go in. Number one, all right, let me start with this. A divorced man can be a married priest.
Correct.
How would that work?
Well, first of all, I think the divorced man, if he's gotten an annulment and he's free to marry, he's free to be whatever he wants. And if he applies, I'm sure there'll be an evaluation process, and once that process is done, he may or may not be accepted, but that's a possibility.
If somebody loses their spouse, their wife,
Right.
and they feel the inclination to possibly explore becoming a priest, can they do that?
Of course they do.
Okay.
Yeah, and
All right.
there are a number of cases that we see within our own diocese of people who are widowers but decided to become priests, and they are priests and active in the ministry.
Number three is the fact that you talked about other members. How do I frame this?
Well, other people who belong...
Another church or belong to another religion,
Yeah.
all of a sudden decide that they would like to join the Catholic faith, not just to be practicing Catholics, but they would like to take it a step further and become an ordained priest.
Yeah, I want to say I don't think too many things happen all of a sudden in that case. However, they decide they want to become Roman Catholic. They have to apply, obviously. They have to have good reason. And once they're evaluated and they're seen to be sincere, then, it's possible they can be accepted. Now, once they're accepted, that means we have priests in the diocese who are married and with children.
And I don't think that's a bad thing, but it leads me to this question. Are there parishioners that go, not comfortable with this person saying Mass?
Yeah, of course there are, but there's other reasons, too, that they may not be comfortable with. One of the things we see is money is very important. In order to support a priest today is very costly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking about an active priest. You're speaking about providing a rectory, providing food, providing insurance,
transportation,
clothing, insurance. Clothing is on their own because they do get a salary. Now, if you were to throw in a whole family, wow, would a parish be able to support that? Now, a lot of people say, well, the Protestants do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know how comfortably they can do it. Here's what happens. Very often in Protestant churches, people are accepted as pastors after they have been judged by some of the parishioners. Well, that doesn't happen in the Catholic Church. They're assigned, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if they are A-plus preachers, their salary goes up accordingly, okay? Again, that doesn't happen in the Catholic Church. They get whatever it is that everybody else gets, but with a family, you have to give some more money.
Of course you do.
And you have to provide regular housing. Mm-hmm. You can't just provide a little apartment. So, to make the finances cause some difficulties within the Catholic Church as it is structured today to have married priests. That's just one practical aspect.
And it's one that I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about until you just mentioned that. But I would also think that maybe the family could work around that as well because of the fact that possibly others within that family could contribute to their livelihoods.
Yeah, but whenever you're dealing with an organization as big as the Catholic Church, there have to be some standards. So whatever you provide for one has to be provided for everyone else.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe that should be considered then as well at the Synod.
All these things, what you're speaking about are the details that would have to be worked out once they make the major decision.
Is that what would be happening at a Synod then?
Well, at a Synod, first of all, they would decide the spiritual aspects of providing a married priesthood.
Okay.
Now, once you decide on the big picture, the married priesthood, then on a different situation, it's not at the Synod, but maybe private meetings to discuss all the little details, because you can imagine the details are innumerable. Okay?
Oh, listen, we did a jump ball here with, once again, married priests, but it's becoming more and more of a hot button, not a hot topic. You mentioned hot topic at the outset.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's becoming a hot button because of the fact that the ranks are thinning. And I think let's be honest here, given the past scandals, it may to a lot of people make more sense for priests to marry, have a family, and at the same time be more than capable of delivering and being liturgically based.
Okay, you know as well as I, the studies have been made about the pedophilia situation, that it is much more common among married men than it is with priests. Unfortunately, the situation does not solve that problem, I don't think. Married priesthood does not solve that problem.
I'm sorry to just stop you there. I would have thought it may help.
Well, when you speak to Protestant ministers, they immediately say, you guys have it made, okay? Because you're a pastor of the church. Your first obligation is to provide ministry to the parishioners. My first obligation is to provide for my family. And sometimes I'm torn, where you have calls during the day and in the middle of the night and you have to respond. Here I am with a family. I have to worry about the family, and how can I do both? So even they will say, in a way, not all, but there are a number of the Protestant ministers that will say, the Catholics have got the right idea with having celibacy as a requirement.
That's interesting.
Now, the other thing, too, I want to mention...
And it surprises me, by the way, but go ahead.
But the other thing that I would like to... And matter of fact, I wouldn't be opposed to having a Protestant minister come to our podcast and talk about that.
Well, we're exploring that with we're still in search of the great millennial.
That's right. We're in search of the great millennial.
We're going to get that done yet.
But the other thing...
I personally am very open to the idea of married priests. I am. You told me that you didn't think in your lifetime that you will see that, but you do think at some point the Catholic Church will embrace the idea of priests marrying.
I do.
Okay. We've been doing this for over a year now. Is it moving a little quicker than you thought it would have?
No.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay, well, you're on the inside.
Because there's another aspect to it, too.
Okay.
In imitation of our founder, Jesus Christ, who was celibate. So that's another consideration. That's not a practical one, but it's a spiritual one. And so that people would also bring that up as an argument for the celibate priesthood. The other thing, too, I want to say is that the married priesthood, if we're going to go in that direction, I have a feeling that there are a lot of priests already ordained, but who have left the priesthood so that they could be married. I could see where the Holy Father would point to them and say, come on in, okay? You already know the ropes, come on in. The other thing I noticed, too, we have deacons within our church who are very capable of running parishes, of preaching, of ministering as much as a priest.
And they are often married.
Oh, they have to be married.
A deacon?
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean they have to be married? Why couldn't I be a deacon and be a single man?
Well, it's possible, but ordinarily...
I just learned something brand new
Well,
today.
there's something else that's confusing to people.
All right.
And I'll mention it.
Good.
But basically is this. A deacon, what we call a permanent deacon, is usually a married man, and he wants to go into ministry. He has to do all of the training, and his wife has to be part of that. Now, with time, after he's ordained as a deacon, and let's say his wife passes away, he's not allowed to remarry.
Really?
He's taken the vow of celibacy as well. I know that's mind-boggling to people, but that's the way it is.
You folks, you couldn't see me. Father Joe, you'll tell him, you'll back me up on this.
Yeah.
I just shook
Big
my
surprise.
head. Yeah, my
Big
head
surprise.
went back and I was shaken.
The only way
Like
Rome,
what the
only
heck?
way Rome would allow a widowed deacon to remarry would be if
Wow.
if there was a real necessity in raising the children that Rome would concede, okay? Because if a deacon is widowed and has, let's say, 3 or 4 children, well, he can't do it alone. He needs help. All of these situations can be presented to Rome. Rome can make a decision and allow that deacon to remarry. Otherwise, no. Once a deacon is widowed, he cannot remarry.
It's frustrating and confusing for me to take all of this in, but to me, that seems to be a great first step in terms of moving toward the area of really exploring married priests. That is to say, the deacon possibility, the elevation of that deacon, or the priests that have left the faith, the Catholic Church, to go and live a married life,
Correct.
but still are practicing Catholics.
Yeah,
That would seem to be a good starting point.
definitely. There's another area that can be looked at. You mentioned the Amazon before.
Mm-hmm.
There's that whole area in South America that seems to lack any type of spiritual ministry. And that is one of the things Rome might be looking at. And there they would probably look at some of the deacons that might be able to become priests and then work with that group.
The reason why we mention that is because the 2019 Synod will focus heavily on the Amazon, and a subset to that topic will be, again, married priests.
Yeah.
And you were saying that indigenous to that area, perhaps, it's more important to draw from married priests or the consideration thereof?
Yeah, and deacons who are capable of doing the job. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
You see, there's a whole mixed bag there because the diaconate program, as we know it today, the married deacon, if you want, the permanent deacon. See, there's such a thing as a transitional deacon in the church, and that is before a young person is ordained, he usually serves as a deacon from anywhere 6 months to a year, or whatever the case might be. But that's different. There is a married deacon that we call a permanent deacon. And that's the one we're discussing right now. And there are a number of them that could possibly be helpful in that area in South America. So the other thing, too, is if we look at where the churches are in the United States, this would take a great deal of study, but I think it's an important one. I'm talking about demographics. There was a time in history of the Catholic Church when you had a number of churches within a mile. Why are they needed? Well, in some places we have closed a number of those churches. But in other places, that's not true. There's still too many churches in the wrong places, if that makes sense. Eh?
It does.
Because cities have developed in areas where they didn't think they would develop. And so all of a sudden, you have your population here, but then at the other end of town, you have an area with 3 churches, So basically, if we look at the demographics carefully, maybe, and I'm not an expert at this, but maybe you would not need as many priests as people say we need today.
Okay, I'm just going to say it. I'll put it this way. I'm an advocate for priests being allowed to marry.
Good. I think it's a real possibility, but not in my lifetime.
And not in your lifetime.
Right.
What would Jesus do, right?
Correct. It didn't stop him for getting married priests. Peter, and go down the line. Peter and his brother Andrew and so on. They were married. Go on.
How do I go on? I go on by thanking our good friends at Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln for being a proud supporter of the Father Joe podcast. I'm Ken Calvert. He's Father Joe Grimaldi.
Sorry that it's such a short episode, but it's...
I'm coming over there. To the moon, Grimaldi.
To the moon.
To the moon.
You, Jackie Gleason. All right. But thanks a lot. I look forward to next time.
We'll see you next time on the Father Joe podcast. So long, everybody.
So long. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.